तुम देखो भुला नहीं है तो मुझे बताओ मैं कुछ याद है Why did they come to this place of conference room? Should be a movie theater. It's so big. Should be some sort of theater. They have like loads of chairs and a big screen.
We'll make it do something. We'll entertain you, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, you know, give your idea, inshallah.
Yeah, but how do people have big conversations in here?
It's more about the message, you know.
It should be
We
a
do need
lecture.
popcorn. That's the
We need popcorn.
It should be a lecture.
good idea, inshallah. We'll make this part.
The kids want to have a conversation. You know, they want to
Discussion.
discuss exactly. It's not, they're not the kids who would just sit and listen for an hour. So
I will do that.
I know, but then you would also go to sleep.
The last lecture that we listened to was nuts.
Because they always have so many questions after lectures.
Yeah, I was
And the
asking
parents
him
don't
to have a Q&A after it.
Right.
Whether it's later. Maybe we'll have
They don't have to, okay.
think of your questions, like
Yes, they do
hard ones,
questions.
like 2 plus 2.
Right. Or 2
2
minus 1.
times 2 times 2. Inshallah. It looks nicer. It looks like, because we usually sit on like a member, like a pulpit, a member, like a special chair, so it kind of looks like that. So that's how the
And you have a following question.
there is this member they gave me once. It was so tall. It went from here all the way to a high ceiling. I almost had my head to the ceiling. It was like maybe 10, 20 steps. Go all the way up there. And then when you talk like this to the people. And they're like, looking like that. It wasn't good because it causes neck strain.
I mean, right now, actually, this is the reason why they're not in England here, because it's like too big.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, what would you get? Yeah, up in a stage anyway. So we're like, the Molana hope is very close to the ceiling in the light, and it's not going to be
You
comfortable.
know, yeah.
So I apologize if this
No,
is
that's
not
good.
very proper, but
No, it's good.
exactly what they're talking about. Exactly. हल्का सा बजा दो।
I would need it here.
You do need it?
Other morning, we'll see.
Ali? You mean the scotch tape? Then you mean the duct tape? The clear one, but the bigger one, right? The scotch tape, but yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, we should have it somewhere. I can try to see. No, nobody told me about that, so I did not look for that. It's, I have no idea, but I'm actually in the conference room right now, setting up for a while. Kind of. Yeah, I know, but like the crayons are not there. They moved them. That's what I know. Okay, let me ask them. Where did they move it? And yeah, they should have like talked about it before, like we would know that it's gonna happen. I was thinking about it, but I didn't get a chance to like. I mean, yeah, because like you know, I mean, that room was usually used for other things during like the other times. Anything like this again, right? Please just no space. Okay, let me go inside. No worries.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل. Inshallah, we will be starting the series of lectures the first night of Arba'een, and we will start with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Brother Muhammad Al-Khoei. Let us welcome him with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بتغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات.
Thank you for that wonderful recitation. Next, I would like to call upon Brother Zain to come up and recite the salam. Let us welcome him with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ahli Muhammad.
صلوات. اما فضا بتا دے مجھے کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھے کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں کیسا ہے یہ چراغاں دل ڈوبے جا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھے کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں نیزوں پہ جتنے سر ہیں ایک سر ہے ان میں ایسا آنکھیں ہیں بند اس کی اور خاک پر ہے گرتا عباس کا یہ سر ہے تیور بتا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھے کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں ماں کی گودیوں سے لپٹے ہوئے ہیں بچے ہیں ہاتھ رسیوں میں ماں سے ایسے جکڑے بچے جو گر رہے ہیں وہ مرتے جا رہے ہیں، کیا شام آ گیا ہے. اماں فضا بتا دے مجھ کو، پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں. ہونے لگی اذانیں، کیسے سروں کو ڈھانپیں، بازو بندھے ہوئے ہیں، خون رو رہی ہے آنکھیں، آنکھوں کے خون سے رستے خون میں نہا رہے ہیں، کیا شام آ گیا ہے. اماں فضا بتا دے مجھ کو، پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں. اتنا چلے ہیں پیدل کانٹوں پہ سارے قیدی، تھک جاتی چلتے چلتے، چلتی اگر زمین بھی، پیروں کے آبلے بھی آنسو بہا رہے ہیں، کیا شام آ گیا ہے. اماں فضا بتا دے مجھ کو، پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں. صلوات.
Thank you for that wonderful recitation. Let us have a loud salawat, please. Before calling the Sayyid, I would like to give you a short introduction to him. We would like to welcome him for the first time to Al-Khoei Center. And just a brief introduction to the Sayyid, that Sayyid grew up in the greater area of Los Angeles, and he received his bachelor's degree in business administration from the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California in 2001. At the age of 21, he moved to Tehran, Iran, to study in the Islamic Seminary of Tehran with the late Honorable Akhlaq Ethics teacher, Ayatollah Mujtahidi. After the passing of his Akhlaq teacher, he moved to Qom to continue his studies in Islamic legal theory and law. After finishing the Islamic Seminary, he began his Dars al-Kharij and has been studying Dars al-Kharij for about 10 years. Altogether, he has studied for about 20 years in the Islamic Seminary, during which he has had numerous English-speaking engagements throughout the U.S. Without further ado, I would like to call upon Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin, Sayyid Abbas Ghazaviyan. Let us welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. It is an honor being here, being able to talk about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, cry for Imam Hussein, and the fact that many of us feel that maybe we have been left behind. That is, as far as I know, many members of the community have gone to Karbala, and we're very happy. Hopefully while they're doing the walk, they're remembering us. But remember that more important than ziyarat is keeping Imam Hussein in your heart. A person can come, many of the people and enemies of Imam Hussein did ziyarat of Imam Hussein, they saw him. But what is more important is that you live with Imam Hussein, that you learn from the message of Imam Hussein, that at the end of this journey of love and walking and ziyarat and majlis and crying that we have been doing in Muharram and Safar, then at the end you take one more step to becoming Husseini. That's why some say that 40, when you talk about Arba'een, and you know that the Arba'een or 40th of Imam Hussein is exclusive for Imam Hussein. We don't really have an Arba'een for the other Imams. We don't have an Arba'een for the Prophet of Islam. Some things are exclusive to Imam Hussein. For example, praying on the Torba of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that's exclusive. It's recommended to pray on the dirt of Imam Hussein. Some things are very particular to him. Doesn't mean that he is higher than the Holy Prophet of Islam. It doesn't mean that. It means that each person has its own particular characteristics. And one of those is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam has an Arba'een, has a 40th. Why? Because his death was different than the deaths of the other Imams. His death was the death with the sword. He was martyred, and he was in battle, and they surrounded him and martyred him. So hopefully during this Arba'een time of mourning, where we remember Imam Hussein from Muharram until now to the 40th, you can say that the 40th is completion. That when you look at verses of Quran, or you look at, for example, the meeting that God had with Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Quran mentions that He added 10 days, Allah added 10 days to this meeting to make it equal to 40. So things are become complete. Hopefully that in these 40 nights and days that you have been thinking of Imam Hussein and remembering him, you are also becoming more complete. And we see that the Zawar are visiting Imam Hussein. Maybe about how many people right now do you think are visiting Karbala? What are the figures that we have, annually for the ziyarat? They say that it is the largest congregation, peaceful congregation that happens yearly. Maybe about 20 million people. And if you look at some of the flights and you see that the planes, and shows how they're traveling, you see that area around Najaf airport is very crowded. So unfortunately, this Arba'een of Imam Hussein doesn't get much media attention as it should. And that this is the largest annual, congregation, peaceful congregation of the world. But this series that we want to talk about what can we learn, and what does Imam Hussein alayhi salam want from us? What are our obligations? We can cry for Imam Hussein, do ziyarat, but we cannot change. We can come and think that it's been a good Muharram, good Majlis. I cried a lot. I did a lot of Matam. I did a lot of Lutmiyah. But then when I go home, I'm the same person. That akhlaq, that ethical behavior that I had, I'm the same person. When it comes to my prayer and salat, I am the same person. Should Imam Hussein change somebody? Should he cause a revolution within someone's heart? Yes, he should, of course. And you look at many members of the community, many people that were guided by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And he has that capability to change people. One person came to one of the scholars by the name of Ayatollah Khansari, Sayyid Ahmad Khansari. And he said that I have a brother that doesn't behave in the correct manner. He needs to be guided. He's not in the line. He doesn't have taqwa. So Ayatollah Khansari mentioned to him that take him to the shrine of Imam Hussein. If you see him cry, bring him back and I'll give him some advice. He's worth saving, for example. There's hope in him still. Take him to the shrine of Imam Hussein, go to Karbala, and I'll see. So this was one of the recommendations from one of the scholars. That it was a test to see if there's a chance, see if Imam Hussein alayhi salam is in his heart. He goes and he takes his brother to the ziyarat, and right before they even come back there, he sees his brother, his eyes are full of tears. And immediately he does tawbah and changes his way. Immediately. And he doesn't even say need to go back to get advice, for example, from Ayatollah al-Uzma Sayyid Ahmad Khan, a very pious scholar. The fact that he just goes there and Imam Hussein alayhi salam causes that revolution within him. It means that Imam Hussein is a changer, a person that can come in our hearts and completely change us. So when you look at Arba'in, you look at the sources of Arba'in. The 40th, there are different sources. One is the hadith from Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That there are 5 signs for a believer. Can anyone name one of them? 5 signs. This is a very famous hadith. Yes? 51 rakahs of salat. Meaning that the wajibat are 17 and the rest are recommended. A believer does this. Anyone else know another sign from the Ziyarat of Arba'in? Okay, he's helping me out here. Ring. Wearing a ring on the right finger, for example, is a sign of a believer in this hadith. The third, yes. It's not in this hadith. It's in this hadith. It's not there. It's in this. Yes, sister. Saying Jahru bi Bismillah, very good. And praying on Turba, right? And the 5th is a ziyarat of Arba'in. These are the 5 signs from the narration of Imam Hassan Askari. So if they ask you, why do you do Arba'in? You say, it's one of the signs of the believers. Now, do you necessarily have to only do it in Karbala? No. We have the traditions that you can say salam and ziyarat from here. If you go to yourself and you go to a place, nobody can see you. And you think, and you have that ittisal, that connection with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you can do salam from him and connect to him from here. That's one of the beautiful things of ziyarat. And the reason for this is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you're doing ziyarat of his soul. There is a body and soul. The body has been buried. The body, unfortunately, has been cut into pieces, as we read in the Maqtal. But the soul is everlasting. The soul is timeless. The soul is not bound to time and place, as Quran mentions that the shuhada are alive. So therefore you can do salam to Imam Hussein from here. Just like we do salam to the Prophet in our salat. We do salam to the Prophet of Islam in our own salat. Prophet of Allah. The second source for Arba'in is in Misbah al-Mutahajjid of Shaykh Tusi, that he says that this ziyarat is recommended. Another source, that it is recommended to do ziyarat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the 20th of Safar. The last is that there is an actual ziyarat text called Ziyaratul Arba'in, that is from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and Shaykh Tusi brings. And in this ziyarat, it is mentioned, as we know what a ziyarat text is, it's a text that says how to say salams to the imams, what to say when you're there. Because a lot of times you can say salam to them yourselves, but you don't know what to say. So we're going to be learning tonight from this ziyarat text a few lessons. So we said the theme we have is our responsibilities toward Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Arba'in, and we're understanding what Imam Hussein alayhi salam wants from us. It's very interesting that this ziyarat has a very important lesson in it. And it has been subject for debate for a very long time. And the question is this, the answer is in the ziyarat. Why did Imam Hussein revolt? People have given different answers as to why did Imam Hussein alayhi salam go, the numbers we say is 72 versus how many? 10,000, 30,000. Why did he take his women and children, for example? So why did he revolt in this fashion? Why did he do this? The answer to this, because it's hard for us, we cannot gauge, because Imam Hussein is an infallible imam to say we know all the answers completely. We can't say that. But when it's in the text, we can get an idea of what was going on and why he did such an action. So the first thing that is mentioned, it says, وَبَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكَ. Badala, badl means what? Badl, to spend, to spend. Badl, he spent, he sacrificed. Muhja. Who knows here what muhja means in Arabic? Muhja means blood, but not normal blood. Muhja means the blood from the heart. The blood from the heart. Fiqh. He sacrificed, he gave from the blood of the heart for you, God. That's the first part, okay? You have this so far? He spent from the blood of his heart for you, Allah. Liya, and this lam is ta'lil. Why? Why did he do this? Why did he sacrifice the blood of the heart? لِيَسْتَنْغِذَ عِبَادِكَ مِنَ الْجَهَالَةِ. The first reason is that to save the servants from ignorance. To save the creation of God from ignorance. What was going on then, do you think? What was happening? That Imam Hussein alayhi salam saw that the only way to wake up the ummah, the community, the only way is that his blood is sacrificed, his blood is shed. How much darkness must have existed that this was now the only way that Imam Hussein can wake people up and wake them up forever. Is that someone like Yazid, that there becomes a system of khilafat, what started when Imam Ali was left alone. In this system of khilafat, started from the first, the second, the third. And then it led to someone like Muawiyah becoming a Khalifa, then Muawiyah into Yazid. And Yazid, who in front of everyone would drink. He had someone that he was in love with, for example. He broke the rules of Islam. And he was making Hussein ibn Ali give bay'ah to this Khalifa. That things have changed so much. Has anybody here read the history of what happened after the Prophet of Islam has died? Does anyone here have heard of this term called man at-tadween al-hadith? Meaning that hadith of the Prophet was prohibited from being shared. That it was against the law to say what Rasulullah was teaching or taught. That people would share the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen and they would be whipped. That countries like, for example, Iran or different countries throughout the world were conquered or at that time became Muslim. And they were wondering, how do I learn about this Islam? And they would say, only Quran. Only Quran, no hadith. Don't share any hadith anymore. Don't share any hadith. Well, dear brother, dear sister, all of our ahkam, our Islamic laws and the hadith. We have 600 verses around 600 verses of Quran about law, but most of the detailed law is in hadith, is in the sayings of the Prophet. If I ask you, why is Salat al-Fajr 2 units? Show me one verse of Quran. Why is Salat al-Dhuhr 4 units? Why do you say Fajr aloud, men do? And why do they say Salat al-Dhuhr quietly? What is the tashahhud in Salat? For example, what are the rules of congregation? Is there ittisal? Does there need to be connection in Jama'at congregation prayers? All these questions are answered in the hadith. That's why you have in Sunni sources that some of the companions would cry and say nothing was as clear as salat. And I swear that this salat has been ruined. During the time of the Imams, I swear that this salat has been ruined. That Amir al-Mu'mineen becomes the Khalifa. And he begins to pray. Just how Rasulullah taught him. Just how Islam. And he begins to pray. And they question and they say, what is this prayer he's doing? Why does it look like that? Why is he doing that? Then it takes 70 people that were in Badr, because in the battle of Badr, the best were in this battle because they're outnumbered. So whoever was known as a champion of Badr had a very high station. Took 70 people from the Badriyun, they called them, say, Hada Salatul Nabi. Actually, no, that is the prayer of the Prophet. This was lost during the time that 25 years that Ali alayhi salam left. Does anybody know here who did tafsir of the Quran when Imam Ali alayhi salam was left alone? Who did tafsir of Quran? The meanings of the Quran. A previous Jew, a previous Christian. Tamim al-Dari, which was a previous Christian, and Ka'b al-Ahbar, who would say Quds is better than Mecca. He would say Quds is higher than Mecca, for example. He was a previous Jew. Look into the historical sources. These people would begin to do tafsir and comment on the Quran. Well, Imam Ali was left alone. So you have the law. Who's going to teach the law that Imam Ali is left alone? Who's going to teach the tafsir of Quran? Who's going to teach aqa'id and belief? So much so that it kept continuing, and when they left the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet, they even questioned God. And they didn't know who God was anymore. Has anyone here ever read about tajseem? That they made, there's hadith in Sunni books that say that God has a physical form. Yes, some of the Sunni ulama reject them. Some of them, like Fakhr Razi, who's a philosopher, rejects it. But they started giving narrations called a tashbih, making God like a human form. In the narration that God has created Adam from his own image. God has created Adam from his own image, which completely like Christian thought, completely Judeo-Christian thought, that God has an image and Adam is in his image. And that Imam Rida or the Imams began to speak against this. So God does not have an image. I want you, this might be too detailed, but all these narrations were compiled, and I want you to study this book. It's called At-Tawheed of Ibn Khuzaymah. Is a Sunni muhaddith. He takes the narrations and hadith and brings all those hadith that he thinks this is Tawheed, this is the oneness of God. And he brings that God has a face, na'udhu billah. God has shins. God has, when he sits on the chair, he's so heavy, he grunts. And then I want you to compare this to another Tawheed, Kitab al-Tawheed, from the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, called Tawheed al-Saduq, from Shaykh al-Saduq. And see, there's nothing that is about God has an image, God has a physical form. So I'm trying to explain to you what was happening to Islam and why you need the Imams, or else everything would be gone, just like what happened to Judaism and Christianity, and there would be nothing left. And if it wasn't for the Imams that we have today, and Allama Askari writes this book, you can read it online, of the role of the holy Imams in the revival of religion. The Imams saved Islam. The Imams saved Islam. So you have this book, Kitab al-Tawheed, that talks about, I actually read online Christian commentators say, you Muslims always say that we say Jesus is God and Jesus has a physical form. You have the hadith yourselves. You have the same things that we are saying. But we say we don't have that hadith. Ahlul Sunnah have the hadith. We don't have that hadith. Our Imams were specifically against this. The Imams are so against this, they even said, you won't see God in the hereafter. Ru'yatullah, seeing God. We believe that we can't see God. Can anybody here maybe understand that why we cannot see God? Why is it impossible to see God? Because God would be limited then. Anything that is physical is limited to time and space. The entire proofs of God's existence is that there's a God that is not limited, or else you'd ask the question that Bertrand Russell asked, then who created God? If he has a physical form, he said, then who created this physical form? So therefore, God must not have any limit. God cannot be seen with the eyes. He is seen with the heart. And that is the only Tawheed that you can learn is through Ahlul Bayt, from the family of the Prophet. That is the only Tawheed. So we say, Alhamdulillah, that this message that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had is the message of true Islam. Because where you're going to get your tafsir from, where you're going to get your Islamic rulings from, where are you going to get your beliefs from? Fakhr Razi, big Sunni jurist, big Sunni mufassir, at the end looks at the book of Kitab al-Tawheed of Ibn Khuzaymah and says at the end, this is Kitab al-Shirk. He says, don't call it Kitab al-Tawheed, call it Kitab, the book of polytheism. He's Sunni himself, because he's a philosopher. And for a philosopher, he cannot understand a limited God. So you see, this is one aspect that Imam Hussein alayhi salam saved Islam. He made people wake up and see that what are they doing to the family of the Prophet? What are they doing to the Imams? And if you tell people that they took, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, they surrounded him, made him thirsty. In some of the maqtal it says that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was hit with so many arrows, it was as if he looked like a porcupine on the day of Ashura. That they did this to him. People would be astonished. Why would they do this to the grandson of the Holy Prophet? So the first thing, dear brothers, dear sisters, is that we have to become aware of the message of Imam Hussein, which is the message of saving Islam. Message of saving Islam and saving everyone from jahalat, from ignorance. Because if you say God has a physical form, that's ignorance. Because if you don't know how to pray, that is ignorance. Because if you don't know how to do tafsir of Quran, that is ignorance. وَحَيْرَةِ الضَّلَالَةِ, and the confusion of misguidance. An interesting thing that when you ask, sometimes they ask, like they want to imagine what is the life of I'm not a scholar, I'm a student, but they want to ask, what is the life of a scholar like? And people, most religions, you always think that someone that is a cleric or a religious figure, all they do is worship, pray, fast, worship. But the interesting thing is, if you look at most of the time spent that our ulama and scholars spend, most of the time they spend is doing what? Studying and teaching, is knowledge. And if you look at the traditions, and if I were to ask you right now, what is more important? Worshipping God the way we worship, or studying and seeking knowledge? Which one is more important? There was actually two groups of people, it's a hadith, and one was busy in the masjid, praying, doing salat. The other, they were busy studying and discussing. So they asked Rasulullah in hadith, which one of these is afdal? Which one of these is better? Most likely we would say worship. He's crying. He's skinny now. He's shivering. Look at him. He's so good. The one that's reading, okay, anyone can read. Anyone can study. Then Rasulullah in the hadith mentions that actually that group that is studying, they are afdal. They are better. And he says, I have been sent for them. And he goes and sits with them. Sometimes you need these reminders that our religion is a religion that you discover God through knowledge. And that amount, if I ask you this week, how much did you study Islam? How much did you read Islam? Do you have a program for yourselves? Do you have classes here? Do you have weekly classes that you can attend to gain knowledge? And what is the age to gain knowledge? Because when you get older and older, it's going to be harder for you. There's another tradition that mentions that 1 hour of seeking knowledge, and sometimes you think of these traditions, it's mind-boggling, is equal to 1,000 days and nights of worship. 1 hour. I'm not saying this is knowledge. I'm not, as I said, I'm a student, but at least I'm saying hadith. Imagine right now 1 hour of sitting together, and if you're listening, and I think everyone here is, alhamdulillah, listening very well, and we're talking about something, this is equal to 1,000 days and nights of worship. Imagine that. So therefore you see that one of the best things to do, because we talked about Imam Hussein came to wake people, take them from jahala, ignorance. Because people that don't understand, we're talking with one of the brothers that people sometimes they're so ignorant, they make up the weirdest interpretations for Ashura, for example. I'm not going to say what they say, today, but they think that Ashura is something completely weird. It was one of the weirdest things I'll say after the minbar. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard in my life, maybe. But they thought Ashura was this, a battle of, I'm going to mention after the minbar later on. But people can be so ignorant that they can think and become misguided, and they can take Islam, they can go the wrong direction. Dear brother, dear sister, knowledge, Shahid Mutahari mentions that knowledge is like the headlights. Who here drives? You can raise your hand. Who here drives a car? Okay, alhamdulillah. I've been hearing, I don't know if this is true, they're saying that younger people are not wanting to drive anymore. I don't know if that's true or not. When we were under 16, we would sometimes take the car out and, to learn. But now I'm hearing they're 20, 21, and they don't even want to learn how to drive. Driving, you need headlights at night, right? If there's no light, what's going to happen? You fall off, you go in the wrong direction. Knowledge is like those headlights. Knowledge, you need knowledge to know which direction you're going. Because if you're going the wrong direction, you'll keep moving, but you will be going away from Allah. You don't even know it. So the way that you're going to be going to Sirat al-Mustaqim that we pray every day, we say, guide me in the Sirat and the right path. You need knowledge for that. Because if I keep worshipping a God that is false, worshipping or taking as someone as my leader who isn't, I won't be going towards the right path. So knowledge is the headlights, emotion and worship is the engine. Remember that. The tradition has this. Ya Abu Dhar, the Prophet mentions to Abu Dhar, إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ بِعَبْدٍ خَيْرًا. Abu Dhar, when Allah wants khair for a person, wants good, what does He give him? What do you think God gives him? A good big house is good. A fast electric vehicle is very good, for example. All these things are very good. But فَقَّهُهُ فِي الدِّينِ is what's in the narration. He makes them have deep knowledge. Fiqh is deep knowledge. He gives them knowledge. When God wants khair to someone, He makes them know. They'll find a good teacher, for example. They'll find good books. They'll have this drive all the time to read, to study. Because they ask him, for example, what happened in this imam's life? I don't know. What happened in that imam? What is this verse of Quran? They don't know. But imagine right now we're at the center of Ayatollah Al-Khoei. Great jurist, great faqih. How much knowledge did he have? Some would say about Ayatollah Khoei that he was, the most knowledgeable of his time. Right? And some would say, I have stories because my teacher is actually a student of one of the students of Ayatollah Khoei. My teacher that I do fiqh and jurisprudence with is a student. He's a student of Ayatollah Tabrizi, who is a student of Ayatollah Khoei. So therefore, we hear stories that Ayatollah Khoei would study so much that sometimes they would take his lunch and they would put it underneath the door. Underneath the door, so they wouldn't even bother. His time for lunch was the time that he would still study and prepare for class. That is the amount of study that Ayatollah Al-Khoei would do. There's an interesting story I want to share with you about seeking knowledge and how important it is. There's this marja taqleed by the name of Ayatollah Abul Hasan al-Isfahani. He lived in 1867 to 1946. One of the supreme jurists. When he was young, he went from a rural village and he went to the Hawza in that town or whatever. And there where he started studying, he went to Isfahan actually. That time the financial situation in that seminary was not good. So imagine a 12-year-old. This academic system that we have now, was made recently basically. So he didn't have that K to 12 or whatever teaching. They would go to maktab back then. They would become literate, through different ways. It wasn't this K through 12, conventional education system that we have now. So he was 12 and he went to the Hawza. There his father comes and to check up on him. Just how fathers do. I don't know, are there any college students here? That if you ever had a dorm, and imagine your dad or mom just shows up and they'll see piles of clothes, they'll see, we had this apartment in college that we had white carpet. And the white carpet was completely clean because there's always clothes on top, so it never became dirty until, we gave the apartment back. So imagine your dad, your mom comes to your dorm, your apartment, and he saw that it was cold. His son was freezing. So there's no charcoal. There's no bread for him to eat. His son is starving. And therefore, he tells his son immediately, you're 12, pack up your bags and let's go. What you're doing is wrong. But his son loved Islam. He loved to learn. And he began to cry privately at that time. He began to cry and he did tawassul and beseeched the living Imam, the Imam of the age, Imam Mahdi. And he says to Imam Ajallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and he tells the Imam this, he says that to help me. He asked for help. And in a way, he's saying that show them that I do have a master. Show them. Because who is the leader of the hawza, the seminaries? Who is leading the community from like the sun behind the clouds? It is the hidden imam. So when you say that the seminary, which is the place where the scholars are being trained, and you're starving and you don't have food, you're saying that this guy is masterless. You don't have a master. You don't have an imam. So he says, show them that I have an imam. Miraculously, they say that a person knocked on the door, gave him money, he knocked at the door, they answered. He said that actually there's a candle there, here's some money, here's some food, here's some charcoal, and then gave this message. Tell them that you do have a master. Tell them you do have a master. So you see from this story that our scholars, how much they would sacrifice to seek knowledge at a young age, starve or become cold. And second, how much inayah and awareness and protection there is from Ahlul Bayt to the scholars, to that person that is seeking knowledge. So if you want to truly become a slave of God, if you truly want to become a servant of God, if you truly want to learn from the benefit of Imam Hussein, it's good to cry, it's good to do matam, all of that is good. But what is important to do this is to do this with ma'rifah and knowledge. To become a knowledgeable person. To be that person that everyone asks questions. Say, what is the answer to this? What is this? You understand Islam. Because if you understand God, then you'll be able to really worship Him. But if you don't understand God, you don't understand Deen, how are you going to, as some of the traditions mention, that tests and tribulations will come, and that person that doesn't have knowledge, they'll be washed away. Their knowledge, their iman will be washed away. But that person that has knowledge will always be on the right path, because he can answer. You don't have knowledge, you go to college, and they might ask you a few questions. Why does God exist? Why is Islam a right religion? Why do you believe in the Quran? Why do you have imams? And you don't know how to answer, it might hurt your beliefs. But if you can answer very strongly, you can give them the right answer, you can actually bring them to your side. Said for this reason, this reason, this reason. Oh, that makes sense. Let me learn from you. Let me give me some more books, and you can hopefully guide them. So the first thing that we mention, and we'll end with this, is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam uprose because of I would say the ziyarat. Again, this answer I have is from Ziyaratul Arba'in. Look at the ziyarat, it's not long. Look at the ziyarat text of Arba'in. وَبَذَلَ مُحْجَتَهُ فِيكَ. He sacrifices so for you. لِيَسْتَنْقِذَ عِبَادِكَ مِنَ الْجَهَالَةِ. To save your servants from ignorance. So if you go towards knowledge, you're going towards the purpose why Imam Hussein was shaheed. And God forbid, if we stay in ignorance, we're going against the movement of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. وَحَيْرَةِ الضَّلَالَةِ. And the confusion of misguidance. If we can dim the lights now, we'll mention some of the musibat of Arba'in now. And we said that there are two factors to humans. One is the factor of knowledge. The other is the factor of emotion. And both are needed to remember Imam Hussein, to learn from Imam Hussein. You need to study, you need to learn, but you cannot limit yourself only to this factor of knowledge. You also, human beings, have an emotional side. And that emotional side is what moves human beings. That's the engine. And if somebody asks us, why do you cry for Imam Hussein? Why do you put black banners? Why do you put black on this chair, for example? It's so you can reenact and you can bring emotions for Imam Hussein, so therefore you can fully remember him. Because if you only do it intellectually, you won't fully remember him. I want to take you to a very loyal companion of the Prophet. I want to talk about Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, a companion that you've probably heard about, a companion that is one of the first people to visit Imam Hussein alayhi salam's shrine. This companion was one of the mujahideen during the Islamic era. This companion was there, they say, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was born. So he knows Imam Hussein very well. He knows, possibly saw when when Rasulullah called Imam Hussein the best of the youth of paradise, the chief of the youth of paradise. When Rasulullah would cry for Imam Hussein, we have in Shia and Sunni sources that it is Sunnah that Rasulullah cried for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was there, he saw this. And he was awaiting the day because the Prophet foretold that Hussein ibn Ali would be killed in this manner in Karbala. So now it's Jabir ibn Abdullah. He is going to visit and he has heard that they have made Imam Hussein shaheed. So he comes with Atiyah, a person, another friend of his from Kufa. It's narrated that Jabir arrives alongside the Euphrates, the Furat. There Jabir is mentioned that he performed ghusl. He wore a clean white garment. And that he walked in a slow, respectful manner towards the grave of Imam Hussein, the first visitor of Imam Hussein. It wasn't a shrine like you see today. It's just a place where Imam Zainul Abidin buried. The narration says he reached the grave, and I'll read it in Arabic. Hatta idha dana min al-qabr. This is in different books in Bihar, for example, or Maqtal Hussein Khawarazmi. Hatta idha dana min al-qabr. Imagine Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. He saw Rasulullah kissing Imam Hussein. He saw Imam Hussein on the shoulders of Rasulullah. He saw how much he loved Hassan and Hussein. And now he's going to the grave of Hussein ibn Ali, who was killed not by Christians, not by Jews, by Muslims, by people that claimed they were Muslim. So he says, قال مسني المسني فألمسته. He says, have my finger, take it towards the grave, possibly because he was blind at that time. Take my hands so I can touch the grave. فخر على القبر مغشيا. He passes upon the grave, and then he passes out. That this is touching the dirt, touching the soft soil that Hussein ibn Ali is now underneath. That Hussein that he knew as a child, that Hussein that he knew as a baby, now is under this dirt, beheaded. He passes out. Atiyah, the narrator, says, فرششت عليه شيئا من الماء. You know, when somebody passes out, you sprinkle water on their face so for them to wake up. Jabir wakes up, but he wakes up still in grief. He wakes up and says, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, 3 times. He says, Ya Hussein. He cannot bear this. ثم قال حبيب لا يجيب حبيبا. My friend, why don't you answer your friend? I have come all the way from Medina to visit you, but you do not answer me anymore. وَأَنَا لَكَ بِالْجَوَابِ. But I will answer you. One of the reasons, وَفُرِّغَ بَيْنَ بَدَنِكَ وَرَأْسِكَ. Because your head and your holy body have been separated. This is why you don't answer Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. Dear Jabir, we say, you were not there in Ashura to see. You fainted, you passed out, just by touching the grave of Hussein ibn Ali. But Sayyid Zainab, Imam Zain al-Abidin, they were there and they saw. They were there when they saw Shimr Jalisun ala Sadr. They were there when they see Shimr is standing and sitting on top of Hussein ibn Ali. She was there, Lady Zainab, rushing towards Shimr as if she's rushing towards him. Shimr is rushing to take his dagger, but Sayyid Zainab is rushing towards Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I ask you this, sisters know this better. When you wear an abaya, how fast can you run? When you're running through the army of Sham and Kufa to reach the body of Imam Hussein, how fast do you run? How many times was Lady Zainab fallen when she's rushing towards Hussein ibn Ali, falling and standing up, falling and standing up? Inna lillah, inna ilayhi raji'un. We ask Allah, inshallah, to accept our majlis. We ask Allah to give us patience. And now we'll do Matam for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Keep all of us in your humble prayers, inshallah. Let's do salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
This is a short poem in light to the tragedies of Karbala. And the lyrics go as Muharram, Muharram, where we cry and where we mourn for you, Hussein. So let's all try to join in together and repeat. Muharram, Muharram, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. Muharram, Muharram, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. Together, Muharram, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. In the sky I see a crescent, but it is dripping with blood, the pure blood of Muhammad that once flowed in his beloved, the pure blood of Muhammad that once flowed in his beloved. It's as if I smell a scent of tents burning. It's as if I smell a scent of tents burning, and I hear your daughters wailing, and I hear your daughters wailing. A weeping moon is born, a weeping moon is born, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. Muharram, Muharram, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. Together, Muharram, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. It's as if the moon has no arms, in its eye is an arrow. It's as if water has dried up and no more does water flow. It's as if water has dried up and no more does water flow. I see water flowing through Abbas's fingers. I see water flowing through Abbas's fingers. Before his thirsty brother he remembers. Before his thirsty brother he remembers. By the flag that's fallen, by the flag that's fallen, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. Muharram, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and it's as if I see an infant held up high by his father. It's as if his two arms fragile, just cheering for water. It's as if his two arms frail, just cheering for water. I see a mother screaming inside the tents. I see a mother screaming inside the tents. By the blood of his neck his thirst is quenched. By the blood of his neck his thirst is quenched. By a pure heart that is torn, by a pure heart that is torn, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein Muharram. Where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. I see orphans gathered like birds, all surrounding their father, and like roses under the heat, from sorrow they wither. And like roses under the heat, and from sorrow they wither. I see Hussein telling Zainab, what a test. I see Hussein telling Zainab, what a test. When you see Shimr standing upon my chest, when you see Shimr standing upon my chest. But the sword that is drawn, but the sword that is drawn, where we cry and we mourn, where we cry and we mourn for you, Hussein. Salawat.
زيارة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباكر، السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق، السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر القادم، السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد، السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري، السلام عليك يا حجة بن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا قابة الإمام، يا إمام وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل على ظهورك، عجل على ظهورك يا ابن الحسن، يا ابن الحسن، عجل على ظهورك، عجل على ظهورك. السلام عليكم وجميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات.